from $4,850 by $500 to $5,350. So again, not amazing, but I know those of you who do receive Pell Grants, I'm sure will be appreciative of the fact that they will contribute $500 a year more towards your education, and that's substantial progress. College Work Study will receive $200 million to support undergraduates and graduate students who work. And then the biggest piece of the money for higher education is in the State Stabilization Fund, which is effectively money that goes to Colorado and the governor and will enable him to balance the budget without having to cut our universities as much as they otherwise would. So again, it's not super exciting in that it's going to mean a lot more money for CU or other schools, but it prevents money from being cut, which is critical. Because I can tell you, before they knew about this money getting down there in the state capitol in Denver, they had, out of necessity, our universities on the cutting block, and would have substantially reduced funding had it not been for this stabilization money, which when Obama signs the bill tomorrow will flow to Colorado, and Colorado will be able to invest to help prevent some of the cuts in higher education. So that is a very important piece of the bill that has an important effect as well. Other elements of the bill to talk about, there's money for health, particularly upgrading the IT infrastructure in healthcare. There's no systemic healthcare reform in here. As many of you know, one of the first bills that we passed was S-CHIP, which is healthcare for poor children and poor families. I gave my first floor speech in support of that. President Obama has already signed that into law. That will cover about 110,000 children in Colorado. But there is nothing systemic, again, about this. There's a little bit of help for people staying on COBRA, which is continuing health care coverage when you lose your job. You're able to keep your health care through COBRA, and this extends the period you're able to do that and provide some money to help people do that until they get a new job. And of course, the jobs that are created through this act in infrastructure development, in healthcare, in education, those jobs, of course, come with benefits. So when we're talking about creating 3.5 million jobs, we're also talking about giving healthcare benefits to 3.5 million people, many of whom wouldn't have those benefits absent those jobs that are being created. So while it doesn't do anything systemic on healthcare, it absolutely helps cover people directly through jobs, through COBRA, and by increasing efficiency through the IT infrastructure upgrades. The part that you've probably heard a lot about in the news is transportation. Colorado will certainly be seeing our fair share of that. There's $27 billion for highway investments, $8.4 billion for public transportation. So again, we're seeing a very green approach on this whole bill. Really, a big part of what we're accomplishing here is paving the groundwork for the greening of our economy going forward, both in the transportation side of the investments, as well as within the tax cut side, when you look at what a lot of those are targeted for, as well as the environmental and clean water expenditures, as well as some of the research expenditures, which of course we're going to be benefiting from directly here in Colorado as well. $830 million from NOAA. We don't get that all in our district, of course, but NOAA has a major facility here, and we'll be seeing a fair share of that. And a lot of the additional money in the sciences is geared around climate research and climate solutions for climate change as well, which is very exciting as well. There's we're upgrading with this money every federal building, including like the IRS headquarters in Lakewood. They have a big building, but other federal buildings as well. We're greening them, cutting their energy efficiency, increasing their energy efficiency significantly. That's about $4.5 billion to upgrade federal buildings across the country. We're increasing funding for weatherization assistance programs. Okay, was getting some feedback there. Can you hear me okay still? So, again, there's a lot of things in here that I think the best way to think of it is, again, it's investing in human capital, physical capital, and tax cuts, and laying the groundwork for the green economy of the 21st century. So it's a very exciting bill. Again, it's not single-handedly going to end the recession, turn things around overnight, but this is exactly the type of thing the government should be doing in a recession to help reduce the duration and severity of that recession. We are, and I was a business person before I went into politics, and I'm certainly cognizant of the bottom line in debt. And one of the criticisms we hear is, well, what about debt? This is, of course, financed through debt. And a couple points on that. Yes, it is, of course. And the way that this is financed, right now the federal government is able to borrow money at a lower rate than we've ever been able to borrow money before. The 30-year T-bills are about 2.7%. About 5 years ago, that was 6%. 10 years ago, their 30-year rate was 8 or 9%. So, keep in mind when you hear about these numbers, when you borrow, X dollars at 2.7%, you're effectively paying the same interest as borrowing a third of that amount at 3 times the interest rate, at 9%, like we were a decade ago. So this is really the time to start investing in infrastructure and financing those activities. Also, the best way that we can have a budget surplus again is to grow our economy. We are not going to balance the budget by cuts in a recession. We're going to balance the budget by emerging from this recession, growing our economy, and yes, there's a very important opportunity we missed in the early 2000s is we should have had budget surpluses when the economy was good. We should be, in my opinion, paying down the national debt and have budget surpluses when we have a strong economy. And when do we use that? We use that when we have a weak economy, a recession. So you kind of round out the lows and round out the highs, and that's sort of the basis of Keynesian economics, and that's a theory that I ascribe to as well in terms of the proper role of government, trying to reduce the lows of recession, and when things are good, you should be running a surplus and paying down that debt. There's really nothing to, you've heard, I've been trying to sort of study some of the talking points against this bill. Some of them don't have much validity. Like one of the things you might have heard is there are a number of people on the other side of the aisle that said they didn't read the bill. Well, I mean, that's kind of their fault that they didn't read it. It's true we didn't see the final compromise until about 2 days before we voted, some of it until the day before, but about 90% of this bill is what we voted on 3 weeks ago. We vetted it all, we knew which areas were in flux, and it was only a few areas that we had to go back and check and see where they landed, in the final day. So anybody who wanted to know what was in it should have, and there's really no excuse for not knowing what was in it when we passed it. Of course, like anything through the legislative process, there's going to be some items in this bill which people pick apart and make fun of. Some of them actually aren't in the bill. I mean, one of the attack points they did was something about mousetraps in San Francisco. That's not even in the bill. It was sort of made up. But nevertheless, there are things in the bill that might not sound good to some people. Some of the high-speed rail solutions, some of the other things that they don't like or that don't sound good. Some were taken out, but there's a lot less of that than one might expect in a normal bill. I have to talk about the way this bill was done with no earmarks whatsoever, and it was done without any substantive amendments that added pet projects of members of Congress. President Obama showed really good leadership in making clear to the United States Congress that was the way that he wanted the bill in the national interest, and he didn't want this to kind of become a bill hostage to the normal processes of Congress where everybody puts their pet project in. So there is a lot less of that, and indeed hardly any of that, that we sometimes see on what we call appropriation bills that spend money. So I'm very happy with how this bill